Hey guys, so today I'm going to talk to you about my observations and reflections on successfully going through my first year of marriage with my husband. Um, our first year of marriage was the anniversary date of May 24th, and a lot happened in the first year of marriage that people just didn't prepare us for. So I'm just going to kind of share like our journey. So when we got married, it was a really rough engagement period because we got engaged during a Chiron retrograde, which for those of you who don't know what Chiron is our life wound in astrology. It's the wound that we will have constantly appearing throughout our life for us to transcend and heal from, and to just like really come home to ourselves and love ourselves as deeply as we can through whatever expression of the wound we have. And so my Chiron is in Cancer, and it is the wound of abandonment. And then Chris's Chiron is in Taurus, and it's a wound of low self-worth, and then like materialism and time management struggles. And so all kinds of stuff was just popping off left and right with the engagement because, like, I mean, weddings can be very material, and there's a lot to do with time management, and there's a lot to do with worth and families coming together. And then for me, like the abandonment one was just like rearing its ugly head and going off at Chris like a freaking like little fight dog in a fight ring. And there was a lot of stuff that like neither of our parents really prepared us for. I didn't really have much biological family at the wedding. I had a shit ton of soul tribe, and I'm so grateful for those people that were there, and I love you guys immensely. And meanwhile, Chris had a bunch of biological family, and I didn't feel the grief of my abandonment wound the day of my wedding, thankfully, because I was just so held in love by my people that traveled for me to show up for me, that knew that I had this wound, right? Um, However, after the wedding, there was a altercation between Chris's sister and I did not feel the most supported by Chris because he comes from a family that is very enmeshed, and like his Chiron, his worth just really seems to depend on what his family thinks of him. And if he goes against the grain, it like kind of shakes his foundations, right? And so it was really hard because she and I got into it, and I handled it like woman to woman, very objectively. I tried really hard to take out any like reactive words and stuff in the message that I sent her about what happened. And then she was not accountable at all. She tried to sweep it under the bridge, and then her husband got irritated with Chris for allowing me to talk to his wife in the way I did. And Chris was like, well, I don't agree with how you handled it, and I don't agree with how she handled it. And he was totally just trying to people please. And it was just not a great way to start off like our first few months of marriage, because that like arguing and fighting ensued for quite a while after. And then slowly more and more like animosity and stuff started building between us. And I would say we lived a good chunk of our first year in marriage in separation, as our little wounded inner children like flailed and kicked, and as we tried to parent them the best we could, even though we hadn't really been taught how to do it. And then something else that had came up for us was the conversation around finances. Like neither of us was really prepared for that, and we're still learning about finances. Like we're 1 year in, we're still learning. We're getting to the point where we're probably going to have a joint account and then have separate accounts for like fun money or pleasure money. However, at first we both just really wanted separate accounts, and like we didn't want to work as a team when it came to finances. And then the way of life this year has really just made it where like Chris has really had to step up and help me more and more financially as I put more and more time into my business. And right now the time I'm putting into my business is not paying. It's just me showing up over and over for what I'm passionate about and my soul calling. And it's pretty interesting because for me with money, like not having money makes me feel like I'm going to be abandoned and I have nothing to contribute. And I mean, I remember actually some of where this wound started. It was like when I was homeless, there was this guy I really did like, and I asked him what he needed in order to be in a relationship, and he's like, well, I need a woman with a house, a car, and a job. And I mean, I had the job and I had the car, but I didn't have the house. And now with Chris, I think I still hear like that story going on. And so I have the house and I have the car and I have the job, but the job isn't quite paying my bills right now because I'm just really restructuring and relearning my whole relationship with money. So then it makes me feel like I'm less than and I'm going to be abandoned because I don't have like this financial stuff to validate why he should love me or whatever. Meanwhile, for him, for his Chiron, part of him healing his Chiron is learning to be more generous with money. So it's kind of interesting because like relationships are our greatest teachers. And so here I am worried about abandonment, and here he is like maybe in this life he's more generous than he was in other lives. I don't know. But here he is learning to be more generous with material wealth, right? And then here he is learning how to not people please and how to be assertive in this marriage and how to find his worth and stand in healthy masculinity and know his worth. And so, I mean, we're now at the point where we're able to really surrender to love. We've put down a lot of our defenses. We're on the same page about a lot of things. And yeah, we're in a really good place right now. But I would say the majority of the first year of marriage was extremely difficult. There was a lot of shadow work going on. We had a huge, huge, huge blowout back in February where we almost got divorced, and that was completely my fault. I let all my bitterness, all my self anger, my self hatred, everything that I wasn't really looking at, I projected it all at him, and I hated him so much, and I emotionally abused the fuck out of him one night, and it was just really, really ugly. And we both like were very shell shocked after what happened. And I asked him to choose love and to surrender to love and to hold space for me as I figured things out. And I really had to do some deep digging and deep work around healing from being raised by narcissistic parents. I have two mothers. I have a grandmother and a biological mother. The biological mother is way more toxic and narcissistic than the other one. However, like to have that kind of personality type raising you, it's hard not to be conditioned to be narcissistic when you're like saturated in it, right? And trying to survive. And so I realized there was some really narcissistic tendencies that had been my crutches in our beginning stages of marriage. And I've had to do a lot of work around that and unlearn those narcissistic traits. And like Chris and I even have like a joke where if I start acting a little narcissistic just to like catch my attention, like I told him he could tell me, hey, you're being the N word right now. And then I'm like, oh shit. And then I like reroute and I like go into the different coping mechanisms, healing techniques, journaling, whatever it is I need in that moment to come out of it so I can really surrender to love and not be defensive toward the man that loves me. And so we've had to learn that. Or another one I've told him lately is just to tell me when it's like, there you are telling the stories again, like the stories of my past, the stories of my mother's, the stories of my conditioning, right? And so I'm so grateful that he stuck it out with me and chose love and that we got through that. I feel like all the really great power couples go through this make it or break it type um, initiation or rite of passage in their relationship. And that was definitely ours. We call it the blowout. And shortly after that, I came across Mama Gina and the School of Womanly Arts, and I did the virtual pleasure women's boot camp. And I also did her art of surrender class with her and her partner. And Chris did the art of surrender class with me. And it was so empowering and such a game changer for us as a couple. They gave us like technologies and tools to help us surrender to love and to drop the defensiveness and to just like really move stuff out of our bodies, because the body keeps track of everything. Like the mind talks nonstop, but like the body actually does a lot of the communicating, the nervous system. Like there's so much around somatic experiencing, somatic releases, somatic memory, ancestral stuff, right? And so through the art of surrender, Chris and I learned how to do a technique called spring cleaning. We learned how to do swamping, which I mean, I taught him spring cleaning and swamping through virtual pleasure bootcamp anyway. So he was kind of ahead of the art of surrender class in that sense because he'd already been introduced to it. He was open to it. He saw helpful it was. And like these techniques, they really help reduce the energetic charge around really heated topics. And so we actually, in the middle of the Art of Surrender class, got to the point where we were able to spring clean on the blowout, which he'd been avoiding for a long time. It was really hard for him to process and work through that. And when we spring cleaned on it, it just really reduced a lot of charge, reduced a lot of animosity. It really created space and made way for us to really dig in our feet and bond and unify as a team and as partners. So that way we can go house hunting in Florida. And so, yeah, like now here we are getting ready to move to Florida, and we're just way more unified and way more in love than we've ever been with each other. And I mean, we both see where we were in the wrong, where we both chose separation, where we both chose armoring, where we both chose our wounding over love and over each other. And it's just really amazing how far we've come in the 1 year that we've been together married. We've been together about 3.5 years, not married. But yeah, we really had to work through that, and that was really hard. And I really had to utilize the people that like throughout the year, I had to utilize the people that I had pledged in on our wedding. You can see our wedding video, it's on the channel. It's called Chris and Tisha's Sacred Union. And I utilized the people that I pledged in quite a bit, like because I don't have a family that I can turn to for these things. And I'm sure some of you watching probably also come from similar backgrounds, because like energy attracts like energy, right? Or maybe you have a partner that doesn't really have family, or maybe you have a partner that's overly attached to their family. So yeah, like I really called in help in that way, and I'm so grateful. Like when we had the blowout, I felt like such an ugly, disgusting person because a lot of the literature out there on narcissism, like it's so black and white. There's no gray, and a lot of people want to be victims and go on and on about how narcissists are such monsters, and that really created a complex in me. I was like, am I a monster? No. Like, was I raised by monsters? No. Like, I finally was able to have compassion for the women that raised me. It's taken me a long time to get there, and I was on the victim bandwagon for a while, and I also looked the other way and didn't see how I had some of those qualities, right? It's a journey. And so yeah, like I had a lot of help and support from really close soul tribe members. You all know who you are, that really helped me walk through and crawl through that period, because it was really hard. And that period also is where I really started stepping up my self-love practices. Like I had so much grief, so much depression. There was waves of suicide that flowed through me. Like I thought my life was going to end when I thought Chris and I were going to get divorced. And doing a self-love practice for 40 days is definitely something that helped keep me afloat as well. And it helped me not jab at Chris or attack him. And let's see, what else was there in the first year of marriage? First year of marriage, there's a lot of like unlearning, and there's a lot of learning about boundaries. Like the blowout obviously showed Chris where his boundaries were, and it showed me what boundaries not to cross, right? But like there's been a lot of skirting around boundaries on Chris's end, and it's brought up conversations for us around like in-laws. Like I find that when my in-laws come to visit, that my husband and I live in separation when they're here, because he always wants to give them our bed and our room, and then he sleeps on the couch and I sleep in the guest room because it's a twin bed. And then the whole time he is like doing all kinds of things for his parents, and like he's like neglecting our relationship. And so I find that I've had a lot of resentment around the in-laws staying with us, because it really takes away from us having connection. And so that's been something that we've slowly been chiseling away at. And it has been really nice now that we have finally got them to stay at a hotel a few times, which they stayed at a hotel when we had the blowout. And I was really glad they didn't ask questions about that. Like I could not have handled that at all. Like at all, because that's something with my Chiron I've been learning to accept, is like Chris's family is never going to be able to love me unconditionally in the way that I desire, because we are all so contracted with each other. And so for me to really heal and transcend and embrace my Chiron, they can't love me unconditionally, because that goes against our contract, right? And so I have to accept that. And so I thank them for the parts they play, but However, with that said, like I don't feel safe around them when I'm going through really big emotions and stuff because his mom tends to practice like toxic positivity and just bypass stuff. And she changes subjects and she relates and she has her own little narcissistic tendencies, which mirrors me, which mirrors my mother's. There's a lot of mirroring, right? Um, so it's really nice to have them stay at a hotel. And then I'm hoping when we move that they continue staying at a hotel. I know we're talking about having a bigger bed for the guest room, but like I just find that as we learn about boundaries and learn about unifying in love, that I really love my space. I love knowing that I can see the in-laws for like 12 hours and then they leave and I can have a cup of tea with my husband and maybe have a foot massage or cuddle and not have to worry about them getting up to pee or worrying about them like saying something because they walk by and they're like, oh, how cute. Like I don't want to interact with them nonstop when they're with us. And so learning about that and then learning about accountability and how accountability is like such a turn on for me. And it's like such a turn off to like have someone not be accountable and not show up for themselves, not show up for their partner. And so like watching Chris as he goes to therapy and learns to be more assertive and learns to be more accountable and just really witnessing him and his journey and his change. Like I've managed to change much quicker and to integrate and unlearn and relearn and really to fly and to weave. But I think that's because of my soul journey that I'm on and my soul calling, whereas Chris has done it a lot more slower. He's also a Taurus, so like very slow and sensual and stubborn and sure-footed all in one, but it makes his pace a lot different than my pace because I'm an Aquarius, I'm an air sign, very like light speeds in the air, mentally stimulated. So yeah, it's just been really cool to watch him shift and step into his masculine. And it's been cool to finally like after the art of surrender have and really step up and own up to where he falls short sometimes. Because for the longest time, I was really owning up to my stuff. And then I was getting really angry because one person cannot do all the work, right? And like our vows were wonderful in this first year of marriage because they were a constant reminder of what we promised each other. And so it's pretty exciting because we'll be getting married on paper in September. And yeah, like it'll just be really cool to go over the vows again to solidify them. It makes me think of like a hand fasting back in the day. Like back in the day, the hand fasting ceremonies, you did a hand fasting ceremony and then a year later you did it again if you wanted to be with the person. So it's like Chris and I are basically doing another wedding ceremony about a year and a half after our first ceremony, which really helps solidify our connection and like our unity and love, which is really cool. And I'm looking forward to that and seeing how far we've come with our vows and seeing how it'll feel to get married on paper in a more intimate environment with the beach supporting us and with a lot of the stuff shed and worked through and with love leading the way instead of like all these wounds, right? And so, yeah, our year was a bit of a roller coaster all over the place, but it was worth it. And then our 1 year wedding anniversary, I cried a lot. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe we made it. Like it was so hard. And now I understand why people celebrate 1 year wedding anniversaries. When I was a server, I used to kind of think it was dumb to like celebrate a 1 year wedding anniversary. And now I'm like, it's so much work. It's such a roller coaster. It takes so much strength and resiliency and courage to choose love and commitment in one another and self over and over and over again. So I cried a lot. And we are now going to get in the habit of spring cleaning for every anniversary, as well as swamping for every anniversary, which swamping is like a body movement somatic practice where you like dance out your anger, you dance out your grief, which I mean, let's be real, like we know our partners carry the most charge for us around them, right? So then when you swamp at that 1 year mark, you get to really move that shit out and make way so you can have a more enjoyable year or a peaceful year or a more harmonious year, a year where you work together instead of just letting stuff pile up and pile up and pile up to where you divorce 20 years later because you just didn't work through any of it, right? And spring cleaning is a great tool and technology also to reduce charge. And so I think it'll be really awesome for us to do that in the years to come, which Chris enjoyed spring cleaning and swamping, and so did I. And then we also did a wellness date that day, and we went to go float in salt salt tanks, the deprivation tanks. And we set the intention to release all of the ish from our first year of marriage. And I think he set the intention to release it from the engagement period also. I was also releasing ish that came up for me during pleasure boot camp. So like, I didn't want to like overkill with how much I was releasing, but it was just really, really powerful. We were both super emotional afterwards, and we both just needed a lot of rest afterwards. However, we're going in a few days to Florida to go look at houses. And so we decided that the first day of the trip, we're just really going to drench ourselves in pleasure and celebrating our love and our 1-year wedding anniversary there, which is kind of funny because we did our honeymoon there a year ago the same week. So we're going back, we're going to prime ourselves with pleasure so that way we can find like our dream house and work as a team and be unified. And just like be confident in where we're going, and be strong in our faith of what we're aligning with and what we hope to align with. And so, yeah. And there's just like so much that goes into the first year of marriage. There really is. And if you're watching this and you're like, wow, that's like heavy, and you're not married or in a relationship, just know like later on you might go through something like this, and you can take comfort in knowing that like the emotions and the roller coaster are so like normal. And like if you are married or if you are engaged and like you just find like waves of emotion, anxiety, depression, all kinds of wounding coming up, know that that's normal also, and allow yourself to really connect with it and sit with it and allow it to flow through you, and allow yourself to use your throat chakra and communicate with your partner what you're feeling in a healthy and love-oriented way. And as you unlearn and uncondition from things, like love yourself the way you wish you had been loved when you were a child, because there's going to be some stuff that you work through that you find yourself so ashamed of, so like you feel so disgusted of like yourself that like it's going to be really hard to get through it without that really fierce self-love. And so make sure to put in energy into loving yourself and holding yourself, because while we are created for community and fellowship, we also have to be able to pour in love into ourselves so others can love us as well, so we can receive that more nurturing love, not that wounded love. Because if you're not putting love into yourself, it makes it hard for the other people to match you, right? Like if you're not putting love into yourself, they're going to feel that and they're not going to be able to really put love into you. Or if you're not being compassionate to yourself, they're not going to be able to be compassionate to you. And it's going to be a really lonely process if you do it that way. So just make sure to be really kind to yourself. And a really useful page that I follow on Instagram that has been really helpful is Meet the Freemans, FREEMANS, as well as the Instagram page for Jake Woodard and his wife, Melissa. I don't know how to spell her last name, but you can find it on his page. I also find the pages for like Aubrey Marcus and Vailana really helpful. And Mama Gina's Instagram page is really helpful. Like surround yourself with positive social media resources, especially because we live in a world of so much negativity. And if like you're going through the work of reframing things and stuff, you're not always going to have people in your external day-to-day life that can support you. And so like surround yourself with positive things wherever you can on social media, or get positivity magazines, or like make sure you have a really awesome therapist, or maybe you have that one really close friend that is able to just hold space for you and not relate and not try to fix. And be really good about when you're going to people, just communicate what you need. Be like, hey, like I really just need to get this out. I have no one to talk to. Can you please just hear me out? I don't want you to fix this. Or maybe you do, and be like, I do need advice, but communicate what you need. So that way you can get used to communicating your needs. And then as you get comfortable communicating your needs and you get comfortable with receiving your needs being met, you'll be able to also do that in your marriage with your partner and with yourself. You'll be able to just like see a ripple effect of needs being met every which way. Like you might be like with yourself, I really need a cup of tea today after this horrible fight, or I really need space after this horrible fight. And so you go and meet that need. And then you ask yourself as you're meeting that need, okay, now what do you need? And then you'll repeat that a few times, and you build trust with yourself and with your body to meet your own needs. And then your friends and your soul tribe are able to meet your needs. And then your partner is able to meet your needs. And Like, I mean, my therapist is freaking amazing and I love her. And so she's been so helpful in helping me meet my needs. And so I'm able to go to Chris and be like, hey, I really need a hug right now. Or, hey, I really need you to tell me blah, 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 and give me validation. I really need to swamp it out right now. I really need to spring clean right now. And the more that I do this and go to him for it as my masculine, the more it teaches him that he can come to me to have his needs met as well. So he started asking for hugs. He started mentioning cleans. He started being like, hey, I just want to share. I don't want you to interrupt me right now, because we both have the habit of interrupting each other. And so, I mean, it takes practice, but like, yeah, get in the habit of communicating needs and meeting needs and just trusting your heart in the process. And I mean, you can even like throw in prayer into your first year of marriage, where like maybe you're just really going through shit and it's hard, and maybe like you're not religious, which is fine, or maybe you are, which is fine. Pray however feels best to you. I find one of my favorite ways to pray is to like, I go to work, I work 8-hour shifts, so I'll be like driving in the car and I'll be like, dear God, Goddess, Creator, Creatrix of all that is, I set the intention that this 8-hour shift today serves as a prayer to really pour in the energies of Ho'oponopono into Chris and my alchemy and connection, so that we can navigate these turbulent times with more peace and ease and comfort and connection. Thank you so much. Aho. And so it is. And then I go into work and I just trust that I am a living prayer and that those 8 hours are just pouring energy into my connection with my husband. And that's another practice that Chris and I do in our marriage is we Ho'oponopono each other. Anytime we get in a fight, once like the air is cleared a little bit, we try to do this within the first 24 hours. We'll go up to each other and put our hands on each other's hearts and be like, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. See, I have my hand here and here. So I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. And then I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. You do it to yourself too, but you also Ho'oponopono them. You could be specific on what you're apologizing for, or you could just put in the energy of Ho'oponopono. It's charged with a lot of good juju. So it's actually like just that simple technique is enough to kind of like reduce charge. And I absolutely love that we have that practice. So yeah, I think that's most of what I got for the first year of marriage. Kind of a lot, kind of scattered, but that's honestly how the first year of marriage is too. So, and it's funny, I'm wearing like the blue wig today because I'm all throat chakra, and then yellow, solar plexus, communication, power. I definitely feel more empowered and more in love than I did going into marriage. And I look forward to seeing where the second year of marriage leads us. And I just look forward to enjoying this life with my partner. And I hope that if you're married, that you get to continue enjoying many more years as well. And if you're single and looking, I hope that your desire to find that perfect partner to serve you comes true. And thank you for taking the time to listen. Subscribe to my channel so you can get updates on when I do conversations about energy work, EFT, guided meditations, or anything else that I may post. Thank you so much. Be well. Aho.